Hello, everybody. I hope you've been enjoying Dunwich Week. I have. We're already 4 days into it, and I hope you've been enjoying it as well, Daniel. But we haven't even released that one episode by the time we're recording this. But how's it going?
It's going really well. I mean, I think this was my yesterday's video is probably my favorite of
Yeah, it was a
the
good
four
one.
that's been released, maybe
Yeah,
including this one. But
yeah, it was a
looking
good.
for the
I
next
don't,
few.
We're here to talk about 5 cards that define the Dunwich Legacy. We've kind of been touching on this briefly throughout Dunwich Legacy Week in and of itself, but I wanted to bring Daniel into this to get his perspective on these things, and you can look forward to, unless there's some changes, this might be something we do for the following theme weeks as well for these campaigns. But I'm always trying to innovate and figure out what sticks and what doesn't for these. So we're going to be doing that. Also, apologies for my voice if I start losing it halfway through. I got sick on the first day of my vacation, but it meant that I, was feeling pretty better in the latter half of it, which was kind of nice. So, yeah. All right. Should we dive in? I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's always tough to tell when Daniel and I are involved, but let's do this. I guess before we start, I'm going to ask a question that might be a little bit hard to answer, but what to you is a card that defines a campaign? I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, so how did I pick the cards on my list? Things that I remember,
Yep.
and I mean, that sounds kind of obvious, but a lot of events that happen in this game, as you're playing, really linger with you. Like, you turn a card over from the encounter deck and something pops up, you're like, oh my god, how do I deal with that? Or that just changed the whole round completely.
Yep.
And those stick with you. But it also could be something that when you come back to the campaign, you're thinking about still to tech for, or to have something in mind, like, okay, I know this happened to us last time, we're going to be prepared this time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar for me as well. Things that have caused like an impact where it's just like, this is something that like defines what I think of my head when I'm like, oh yeah, this was a moment with Dunwich Legacy. Like, for example, in Path Carcosa, I have a very big attachment to Young Psychopath, mostly because that's the enemy that I was holding when Travis killed me with a shotgun, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's those kind of things that really stick with me. And then also, yeah, like things that I tech for, like that I'm like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't necessarily need a plan. It's okay if I can just like get my way through this, but it's a consideration when deck building that comes to that. So
I have one other consideration that's going to pop up here, and it's more of a like, what was going on with the development of this particular campaign, and how have things changed maybe since then, where designers have thought, this worked or this didn't work, and things that either they revisit in a different way later, or maybe seemed like a mistake this time. I think that also, especially for this early campaign, is part of how I pick my list.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see your first one on this list. These are in no particular order, by the way. We're not ranking these. These numbers are just here so we know where we are in this video. So what do you got for your first one here?
All right, so this is actually kind of why I added that little addendum. The Wizard of Yagsath is a very strange VP enemy for the game if you look at it from like the last couple of cycles. I think you did an enemy tier list, I don't know when, long time ago, or maybe even recently, about like which enemies are like, I'm cool with drawing this.
Yeah, what are the scariest enemies? Yeah.
This one is... it only shows up, I think, in 2 scenarios. In the first one, if you play extracurricular activity first, and then probably where Doom awaits, because that encounter deck includes literally everything you've ever seen in the game before.
Yeah.
But it's a weird enemy, right? Only 3 health for a VP enemy. Maybe as a first enemy in the first scenario, that can seem kind of tough with its 4 combat, but... And I want to draw this guy. This guy is like awesome. He's a free VP. It's also really strange to me in terms of design. That forced effect, when I came up with this list, I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, that's there. I've played this campaign who knows how many times, and you've played it, multiply that number by 3. I don't remember this ever triggering. Has this ever happened to you?
No, I can't think of anything meaningful, right? Because, like, if you think about it, you draw this guy at the encounter phase, and then he's dead by the next one, right?
Yeah, it's only 3 health.
Yeah, like it really feels like if it was like when an investigator draws a hex or pack card, Wizard of Yogsath attacks engaged investigator, right?
Yeah.
Because like otherwise it's just like this guy is basically just like the thing about him is he has 2 horror, right? Like that's the scary part about him, but he doesn't even have retaliate. Yeah.
So with just the 3 health, he should be dead by the time the next Mythos phase runs around. Maybe you're doing something strange, like, I don't know, playing Drawn to the Flame while you're engaged with this guy. I don't know. But early design, right? I think the one part that defines the Dunwich Legacy as well as part of this is that a lot of the VP is hidden in the encounter deck as part of enemies, and that is very true for a lot of the scenarios. That doesn't happen as much in later campaigns, especially. I think most recently we've gotten more of it, but they tend to be elite enemies instead. Do you remember, I think it was on your Discord some time ago when people were talking about where's the party?
Yep.
And I don't know, there was someone who was saying, like, there's never any victory point enemies in the encounter deck.
Man,
like, what are you talking about?
It happened like every time I talk about where's the party, and I'm saying it's great for fishing out victory enemies, every time I get a comment saying, there's no all VP enemies are elite. And I'm like, well, actually, in like every campaign, there is at least one enemy that you're going to find in the encounter deck that doesn't have VP. And this guy was the start of that, right? And it kind of carried over from there. And yeah.
That's it for this one.
So what I really like about this guy is that he has just like his vibe. Like this is the art that I think of first, where it's like classic like Arkham horror art, where it's like really like it's kind of interesting because I think they do a good job of getting the right art that fits for the set for the new stuff, because as we saw in Nicholas Corey's latest AMA, like he said, like 80 to 90% of the art is new now. They're kind of through the slush pool they had from Call of Cthulhu, the living card game. And some of the recent cycles, they've kind of gone for more like cosmic or otherworldly, but this one is like the gross part of it, where it's like really like disgusting, and like really certain ancient ones call for that, like Aventh, Shubby, very animalistic. Yagsath, his whole thing is about warping these people, which Travis talks about in the lore video that we did for Dunwich Legacy, and I think Wizard of Yagsath is just a really good showcase of that. And I like the separation of the cards as well, even just beyond the text on the card, but also the art on the card, I think could really be very noticeable as well.
And it's interesting for these early cards that the art, I'm glad you mentioned it, really sticks with you, because we've seen it so many times, but I just see that art and it screams Dunwich Legacy, right?
Yeah. One thing that I think is very apt to your point for this character is that I like you as well. You've probably played Dunwich Legacy enough that you know the cards just by looking at the art. That is not true for this guy. The only thing I know about this guy is I get 1 victory point.
Right.
If I was given a blank card, I wouldn't know what this guy did. I would just be like, he has 1 VP and like 3 health. Yeah.
And again, that was kind of my earlier point. Is the prey? I think I noticed the prey while recording this video for the first time. It almost never matters, right?
Yeah. All right, my first one here that we have is Aventh Thraw, which actually was also on your list here, because you gave me a big list to go through this, and I was able to kind of cherry pick some of my own from that and some other stuff I had. But Aventh Thraw is like everything that the Wizard of Yogsath wishes it was in terms of enemy design. For me, a big thing about Dunwich Legacy is that the enemies are actually, when they're big, right? Like, there's some small enemies that exist. They're actually, you can see a lot of the kind of ghoul design, where it's like the ghoul minion, the ravenous ghoul, and then there were like the victory point ghouls. They kind of like scale up like that from there. That was kind of giving you the basis of how enemy stats were managed in the early game. And Aventh Thraw was kind of like the big climax of that, where this is just a regular enemy that has, at the time, a victory point stat line. But it also had a really cool design that came with it in terms of how it was a payoff or kind of like a hindrance for using melee weapons. And Aventh Thraw is the enemy I think of second in the Dunwich Legacy. Number one, we're going to be talking about later in this list. But this is the kind of guy that, as I mentioned earlier, where I'm building my deck and I'm like, do I want to have a firearm, a spell, or a ranged weapon to fight? Or are the Aventh Thralls just going to be a challenge that I'm going to need to overcome? Most of the time, I probably can just overcome them for the time being. They're also pretty easy to evade. You can lock them down like that. Then suddenly they're your Seeker's problem, they're not your Seeker's problem. The other one is the Seeker's problem usually. But they're very good at solving in other ways. But they're like the enemy that that really resonates from the Dunwich Legacy.
Mm-hmm. And this guy doesn't show up until scenario
4.
6?
5. Scenario 5, because he's in Undimensioned and Unseen, which is, I guess, scenario 6. Yeah, it's scenario 6. Yeah, because then it's 7 is Doom. Well, it's technically 5, because I think the first 2 are both 1, but that's not how it works. Okay. Yeah, that's not how it works. Fantasy Flight, you can't trick me.
No. Yeah. So, but he doesn't show up until later. So, what's funny when you compare it to the last guy, just as far as the stat line, forget about the -3 fight for a second. The 4 health is normally what we would expect for a VP enemy or more. But maybe some of the early design that you're talking about is that this guy isn't someone you just kill and then he's gone forever, right? A recurring problem. I think there's 2 copies, right? And when you reshuffle the encounter deck, they come back again. So he's not just I solve this with my, 1 spell event or something, that's the end. I need to keep, this is actually a real threat that I can't ignore. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. And there's not that much text on here.
No.
But the text that is on here is important. And it's your first taste of ranged and firearm, I guess, are not the same thing. So.
Yes, it is. It actually is. I shouldn't have been so surprised when that came out. They were different from the get-go, huh? But yeah, I think that's kind of the thing too, is that when we were going through for our yearbook video for Dunwich Legacy Week, Travis and I had a hard time choosing what we considered to be well-designed Mythos cards and enemy cards. And not because Dunwich Legacy's design is bad. It's actually the opposite. It's actually a very well-designed set of encounter cards. There are so many cards here that are just elegant, simple, and impactful. And I think that ultimately, the reason why I think Dunwich Legacy is rated lower than others is just because I think it's targeting to it targets decks, and people don't like that, right? And it has it'll exploit weaknesses in ways that feel unfair, which we're going to be talking about later in this as well, right?
I just realized, why does this say spell asset?
Oh, wow. So if you use a spell event, you actually don't get any bonus from that? You don't get the bonus? That's actually really funny. Sorry, Spectral Razor. I honestly have probably used Spectral Razor and attacked this guy at 2. Yeah, that is actually really funny.
No, there must not have been any spell events that attack, right? Just Blinding Light at this point?
Yeah, and that just evaded. Yeah.
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 All right. Oh.
Yeah, but, it's always those fun discoveries that you can still make about Arkham after playing this. But I think that it's just a very well-designed Mythos and enemy. But I also think, Treachery and enemy. But I also think the Treachery and enemy design as a whole are pretty solid throughout this entire game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to your next card here, which is...
Speaking of Treachery design, Broken Rails. It's emblematic to me of the scenario that it shows up in, which clearly is the train scenario, Essex County Express. And I find that this scenario is like a lot of scenarios in Dunwich, so very emblematic, I think, of the fact that it can be very easy, I want to say. Yeah. Things can go very well, or this is the hardest game you've ever played, and you're wondering what the heck just happened. And this card contributes. So what I really like about this card, I hate drawing the card, but what I like about it is that this scenario kind of forces you to bunch together.
Yeah.
It's a narrow hallway of locations. It's a train. And you cannot move into the next location without clearing off all the clues on the previous location. And that tends to happen, sequentially, right? Even if more than one player can get clues, someone gets left behind. So it's very hard for you to actually stay apart by at the end of various rounds. Like you're trying to get ahead because the back locations are leaving play too. And this card just says, everyone actually suffers the effects of the card, which doesn't happen that often in this game. Losing an action makes it really tough to keep moving and keep clearing off locations of clues. And then discarding assets at this point is probably pretty bad. There's no test here like Crypt Chill, and it's hard to avoid damage in this one in particular.
That's one thing I've noticed about Dunwich Legacy, and I think Broken Rails is a good example of it. Their encounter cards actually are like, you don't get to take a test. You just have to do this. There's one that's like the guy who's having a stomach ache, where you have to shuffle the card you control into your deck and then mill 3. It's like, oh, that's just like, that just happens, you know? And it's the same thing here. Like, this can lose 4 actions, like if you're a 4-player game. And like if someone has damage, they're also discarding an asset. It just happens, and like you just have to like suck it up, Buttercup, right? Because the only alternative is to just stop, right? And that's why like I think Broken Rails. I think I rated it. It got pretty high on my what's the scariest treachery in Dunwich Legacy. It got up there pretty much because while it doesn't kill you, like Essex County Express can't end your run. It ends. So the thing about Dunwich is another thing that defines it is that VP is so low, and even losing out 2 XP or even 3 XP on Essex County Express can really hurt you going forward, and Broken Rails could be a good reason why that happens.
It can, but I also think that Dunwich was designed at the time where failing scenarios was intended, right?
Yep.
This scenario, I mean, I don't know how we did 2 days ago, but because my memory is bad, right? I can't remember what happened, what I had for breakfast at all. So I have no idea what happened 2 days ago. But this is a scenario where you can be very well prepared for it and know what you're doing in the game and not be bad at the game, have good decks, and you still just get comboed out. I don't even mean by the 4-player combo from like Ancient Evils or something, but rather it can be tough.
Yeah, you get the 3-player clue location, you get an enemy and a Broken Rails on the first turn, and suddenly you're like, we've really lost a lot of stuff, and that enemy is an Acolyte enemy who's over here, right? Yeah, it can happen. Yeah.
And that doesn't happen as much in more recent campaigns, and maybe you've talked about this elsewhere this week. Again, memory really bad, but this campaign's philosophy of it's okay to lose, and some of the scenarios are shorter. I think you just go on to the next one. That's okay. A lot of fail forward mechanics have gone away. I don't know if this is the design is bad because it sort of feels bad for some players, or they've just moved on to say, we actually don't want the game to be quite like this. That kind of variance is less common now.
Yeah, for sure. I do wish, though, that I really like Dunwich. I mean, to an extent, there's positives and negatives to Dunwich fails forward. Like the fact that, I mean, we might even do it on, we might have even done it. Like I said, my memory's also, like you said, my memory's also bad. But like in House Always Wins, I choose to lose it because you get more VP in the long run. But then there's stuff where it's like they can make hard scenarios when the downside is a lot softer. Which I mean, it's all preference. All right, so let's go to my next one here, which is Arcane Barrier. So another thing that I think that really defines a card is if it doesn't go away, right? Like if you have to deal with it multiple times. If someone draws an Arcane Barrier and suddenly it's like, oh, hey, we're going to have to deal with this for a few turns because we all have 3 brain, right? Other examples are things that like Cursed Luck, where it reduces your stats. That one's a lot easier to get rid of, but like cards that stay in play are very memorable as well because you have to deal with them like over time. Like Bryn with the Realm of Torment in Circle Undone, right? Like that is such a Bryn thing, and if that card was just like a one-off Mythos effect that just said resolve the haunted effect on your location at the start of your turn, that would be a lot less impactful than having a card that's like kind of just living there with you. And Arcane Barrier,
in Circle Undone, right? It's forgettable, I suppose.
Yeah. Arcane Barrier is an example of a card that, like Dunwich, like Broken Rails and like Dunwich as a whole, the cards kind of affect everybody, and they're kind of also hard to get rid of. A big complaint that people have about the Dunwich Legacy is that you need high willpower, or as we call it here at PBG, brain, to get through some of these challenges. And for the most part, the effects are pretty minor, right? Like Visions of Future Past, which didn't make the cut but was on both of our shortlist, and also Arcane Barrier are like high brain tests. But the downside is only milling your deck, and you can actually even mill your weaknesses. But there's other implications that come with this, right? But at a certain point, you're going to look at Arcane Barrier, and it's going to suddenly become the scariest card that ever existed. And if you can't solve it, suddenly there can be two, right? Suddenly there could be more. Or something that happens, it's going to happen in Dunwich Week, get ready. We solve one Arcane Barrier, and suddenly there's a whole new second one here. And I think that Arcane Barrier and Visions of Future Past are two examples of cards that, what were you talking about, Daniel, where it's like they're so innocent looking until suddenly the game has comboed you in a way that really hurts. And like when we say really hurts, we mean really hurts.
It also reminds me that a willpower or brain 4 test and 5 on Visions of Futures Past is not really meant to be passed, right? You can, but like at this point in the card game's history, or just the environment, I suppose, you were meant to fail those tests. It was just a question of how much you fail by. And this one is sort of binary. You just discard the top 5 and you move on. Hopefully you don't run into another or have to go back. But I don't know. I think the game was not played in a way that you were like, well, a 4 test, I'll just get up to 8. I can pass this test really easily. So yeah, I think things have changed since then. And I kind of miss these kinds of cards that are high tests where you're just supposed to fail them and oh well. You'll work it out somehow in the future. Nowadays, maybe I'm just sort of trying to criticize people, that people would kind of be. I mean, imagine if this were in a more recent campaign and it were a tougher drawback too. Then people kind of whine about like, this is impossible for us to test. I only have 1, but you're not meant to pass these kinds. So it's just not. It's not just the number on the card.
Yeah, there's. I think there's actually a really good one in Edge of the Earth that is very similar to Arcane Barrier. The one that the ice is cracking. And you have to, like, you either cancel the move in or out, or it's a foot 2 test, right?
Right.
And I actually think that it's a very nice mirror to Arcane Barrier, where the people who, because it's only a 2, people are passing the test that you don't want to. Like, there were times where it's like, I'll try to break through the ice. I'll eat this. And then suddenly you pass, right? And you're like, whoa, sorry, you're gonna have to eat an action to do this now, right? I think that it's the closest thing we've had to that Arcane Barrier feeling, while still being like kind of like the weird inverse of it, which I think is really cool.
Well, that's such a good pull there. You're right, because that one sticks around if you pass it. This one goes away if you pass it. Huh, okay.
Yeah. But I do agree that I feel like I don't want to sound too much like an Arkham boomer here, but I do feel like as a whole, some players are a bit too soft, and I feel like if a card like this was printed today, people would be like, "What the hell? Like, I can't pass this test." Right? But like, it's true, if you look under the hood and you see the design, the intention on this card is you have to mill 5 to move, right? Like, that's kind of what the intention on this card is, and then the hope is that you just don't have to. That it's not a location you have to enter in and out of. Like, for example, the another dimension in or the hub location in Lost in Time and Space. That's really bad.
And this one's in the museum too, right?
Yes, which also has a hub space. Yeah, which it always finds a way to go on that hub space. But luckily, we were super aware of that for our Iron Man challenge, right?
Right. We never ended our turns there.
Never. All right. Your third card, Daniel. What do we got here?
This is like the big enemy everyone remembers. We haven't seen anything like it since. A 6 health enemy, really super low, fight, right? Like
Yeah.
anyone can fight this, probably. Although sometimes you are like, I can pass that. I'm Daisy Walker. I'll just draw a -1, and you don't, and you're like, that was a waste. But man, the forced effect here is the one that people think of too. That you're so used to using melee weapons because they're good, and this campaign, the first full campaign, told you shouldn't do that. And since then, we lost that whole idea, and melee weapons are just king. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to forget this guy because if you don't have a solution, which is anything but a melee card, to do extra damage, this is a whole turn. And if it's the wrong person drawing it, it's impossible to evade.
Yeah.
And the times it shows up, you don't have the time to deal with this guy.
Nope.
You just don't. He shows up in Where Doom Awaits if you do certain things at the very beginning of the scenario, and he's kind of a nightmare. He shows up in Lost in Time and Space. Again, it looks so easy to get rid of, but truly, truly annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember we did a list video on our channel ages ago. Like, I actually don't even want to look up the year it was released because it would make me feel old as hell. But it was like the enemies that we hated the most, right? Like the most annoying enemies. And this guy was on my list up there, mostly because he is, by design, annoying, right? Like, he is here to slow you down and essentially be, if you don't have a firearm weapon, a 6 action attacks, right? Which is like crazy. Like, it's like what you said though, like anyone anyone could fight this guy, right? And like the idea is that you're supposed to work together and punch this pile of goo as a team until he's dead, right? But like when you had machete and 45 automatic, and even now you pull out people bring a cyclopean hammer and this thing just laughs at it. It says, try me, hit me with that hammer and I'm gonna like eat it, right? And I think it is the card that I think of the most, like when I'm designing especially a fighter deck for Dunwich Legacy. You need like a plan for this, both positive and negative, where I think I need to have like a firearm or something ranged to kill this thing, or like events that can kill it. But also, it's one of the only times that I bring Let God Sort Them out to a campaign, because this guy just triggers it. This guy just triggers it. Even if you kill it on like one turn, right? Like if you just like put 5 damage on it, then 1 damage on it, it still triggers Let God Sort Them out. And I think that this is an example, like why, again, that these early designs for Dunwich are so memorable is because they have big highs and big lows. But this guy is annoying if you're going into a blind campaign. But I think it's like the good kind of annoying, where it teaches you, hey, you should be versatile, because that's kind of what Dunwich Legacy was trying to teach the players. It's also what the card pool was trying to teach the players when this came out.
Yeah, I feel like this guy should exist in more forms, I suppose, in the future, just because it demands a solution that is not a melee card, which is the easiest solution to enemies, but it actually demands a lot of interesting other possibilities, right? Not just I have a 45 automatic or something, I take 3 shots, goodbye. That works. But 1 combat means that you could throw a makeshift trap on the location and make it really easy to get rid of. A shotgun or something, you might be able to one-shot them.
Map the area as well.
Map the area would be really cool. Any other traps, I think, can help, because maybe you don't want to deal with them at all. Just, lock them down for a while.
Yep.
What about, I was going to say that Grievous Wound, but that's a melee card, so that wouldn't help too much. But I think there's a lot of cool ideas that you could use to deal with this guy instead of the normal thing, and most enemies don't have that, I think. So I like this guy.
Yeah. All right. My number 3 is Twist of Fate. So this one's a little bit of a weird one, but when I was going through, this is the one that I kept going back to. It might be because every time I see this card, I hear Bryn saying "Twist of Fate" in my head, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of burned into me. Good job, Bryn. You've basically implanted something in my head for this. But as I was going through, it kind of fit in things that we've already been touching on here, where Dunwich Legacy is soft until it's the hardest thing you've ever had to deal with, where you suddenly draw a turn of encounter cards that are just brutal, right? And you see the first Twist of Fate and you're like, oh, this is nothing, right? This is totally fine. But then you get Take Two Horror, and you're like, ooh, that really sucked, right? And then you get the second Twist of Fate, and you're like, please, for the love of all that is holy, I would love to draw anything other than a symbol. And then you draw a symbol, and you're like, ah, frick. All right, now I've taken 4 horror, testless. Like, yeah, I'm pulling out a token, but, like, I have no control over that token. Well, some people do, but for the most part, you don't. And then you see the third Twist of Fate, and you're like, please, for all that is holy, just do not deal me the horror, right? And you have absolutely no control. And I think that's kind of what the thesis of Dunwich was, where they were giving, like, at this point now, I feel like players have a lot of control over the Mythos phase in terms of player cards, and also in terms of design. There's a lot more where it's just like, take a test and have this thing happen, have some control over it. You can fight back. But Dunwich as a whole was like, if you think about it, put this card into your threat area, you have -1 to all your stats. Reveal a random token, a thing happens. These are from the same set, by the way. And then there's also just like, as we talked about, Visions of Future Past. This is designed for you to fail this test. You are milling some cards here, right? Light of a Forgamon didn't make our the final list, but was also on our short list here. This just turns all damage direct and all horror direct, right? These are all things that you actually have very little control over your result in the Mythos phase. And I think that Twist of Fate is kind of like the ultimate example of this, because it is literally just fate deciding how you're going to be taking on this.
Yeah, there's so many cases in modern Arkham where you get a test. You know, compare this to Rotting Remains, right? Which, yeah, the damage is here too, but the Take Two horrors if you fail by 2 on a test. And nowadays, people are going to say, well, I have my skill card that has 1,000,000 icons on it,
Yep.
right? And I'll just pass the test and I won't take any horror. And you have, other than Ward of Protection, deny existence, I guess. There's not much you can do about this, right?
Yeah. And that's why Current is going to be fun, because it takes away a lot of our power and makes us feel like... It's like there's that... I saw in the article, there was the whole... it's going to feel like playing Forgotten Age, when you just had Dunwich, Carcosa at Forgotten Age, and I'm like, hell yeah. It is going to feel like that. It is. But it's true, right? Like, it is kind of... I'm curious to see, like, the 1-2 punch, because Dunwich, and even Carcosa to a lesser extent, was very much of, like, you're at the whims of fate here. And it's not so much in the current design, but who knows? Maybe that'll change too when they go into this new format. But I also think, it's also cool. I think the designers have been doing a good job of changing the feel of the treacheries from set to set, because I think, like, most recently, Hemlock and Drowned City feel very different to one another in terms of their encounter card design. And I feel like hopefully that means they just try new things with every cycle. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. I do like this one also just for the fact that damage and horror is an important pressure to put on to investigators. And if just giving you testless damage or horror is a way to kind of limit the power and the number of rounds you really get to take. Or maybe you have to take more soak, of course. Light of Forgamon says no to that. But yeah, this is good. I know someone's going to comment and say, what happens if I reveal a bless token? And another like hallmark of Dunwich is they didn't think about what was going to happen in 5 years. Don't worry about it. Don't freak out.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
If nothing, just you. Congratulations, your fate was blessed. That's all really what it comes down to. All right, Daniel, what's your number 2?
I have no idea. Oh yeah, it's this. Brood of Yagsath. It's hard to not include that on this list video, right?
Yep.
It is probably the most talked about card because that scenario sticks out as being like, remember that one?
Yeah.
It's so weird. And it's a good scenario, and I think it's really fun to keep playing that one over and over again over the years. Please don't play it over and over again in one session. But every time you go through, you're like, I wonder how many we're going to kill this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. And it makes it an interesting scenario. And sometimes I roll into it, and the answer was 0.
Yes. Oh
And
crap! None.
yep. And it just happens, and you're like, well, and there's some changes I would make to this scenario to make it a little bit more engaging, but I do still find it to be interesting. Now, we don't have the esoteric formula here, but that's kind of necessary to talk about. The way to actually damage these things is to use this other spell that gives you +2 per clue that's on this, and you have to use willpower. So that means that you need to think about that in some way. I think there's a lot of ways, especially with the full card pool now. But most people are like, I better bring someone who's got like probably 3, 4, or 5 brain to this campaign just to be able to deal with them, or boost the numbers in some other fashion. There's the clues, there's other stuff, but 6 is a very high number.
It's a big number.
And the 2 horror, 2 damage that it deals if you aren't able to evade this thing is also a problem. I actually think more about the evasion part than the willpower part, just because this, I mean, massive, right? Like that part is a big problem, and if you can't exhaust it, then you are going to be in a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, 100%.
Now there's a missing thing here, right? There's victory 1, but there's no elite trait there. So
I think
won't say more about that.
I think again it shows, like we're talking about the conglomeration, this guy has a lot of downsides in terms of his designs against the players, but there's a lot of upsides as well that you're able to use and take advantage of that with this, which I think is super exciting. And I think that on repeat plays are become a little bit more exploitable, which is really fun. This guy is frustrating by design, so like I understand why people don't like him, right? Because he is designed to just basically say, no, you're playing the game my way. And if you don't, congratulations, you're going to hit the highway, right? Like, it's kind of like that sort of vibe. And I think that ultimately, while I sympathize with people who feel that way, I do think it's a little bit more fun to sometimes have a scenario that just, like, changes the rules and just says, hey, you're playing this my way, because just so you know, there's 7 other scenarios that you can play to go with this as well. And I think that's exciting. And I like when they do that. I think like the most recent example of that was The Longest Night. That one really changes Arkham, right? And I think that this was like a first good tester for that. And ultimately, I think I agree with you. It is. I also I'm not like super negative on this one. I think it's fun to challenge myself to see how many I'm going to get. And I also feel very tense about this one. This guy was like a good first iteration of this, but I think they've improved on him a lot. But I do think that he's a monumental card from the Dunwich Legacy.
Yeah, and the scenario itself has a million other enemies to kill.
Yeah, like the Aventh Thraw, whose first appearance here. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's the other Thrall? The
Lupine Thrall.
Wolf one.
Yeah.
Lupine. Yeah, that guy's also kind of a nightmare. So I've never felt like the fighter is sitting around saying, "Oh no, I can't use my weapons at all." It's just, I don't know. I mean, I think it's the other randomness in the scenario that makes
the random
this guy,
movement. Yep.
The random movement, the fact that there are locations that let you put clues on the enemies, but then sometimes you randomly don't get those.
Yep.
So it's kind of awkward sometimes, but when it all comes together, it can be a very fun scenario.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. All right, my number 2 is the Whippoorwill. This guy is so nice. He showed up in another scenario later in the campaign. Mr. Whippoorwill is I don't plan around him like I do with the other enemies we've seen on this one. I do think that he is such a vibe for this campaign, right? Where the Whippoorwills play a big part in the Dunwich horror short story, which we talked about in the lore video earlier this week. I learned a lot. Travis taught me so much in that video, so I hope you guys all learned something too.
I learned a lot too.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear. But these guys are such a perfect enemy design. Like if I had to look at like what a perfect enemy is in this game, it would be the Whippoorwill, because they have such a simple line of text, right? Which is just they're aloof and everybody gets their stat reduction. We're again seeing kind of like that everybody's being affected equally by the encounter card, which is super nice. And what it does is it allows other cards to be softer, right? Like if you draw an Arcane Barrier and a Light of a Forgamon, those do nothing on the turn they're drawn. You actually just don't have to worry about it, right? But someone else drew a Whippoorwill, so it's kind of like you're drawing 1.5 encounter cards in total, so it kind of like balances out in that way. Don't mind the fact that eventually a Forgamon and the Arcane Barrier will matter, but like in that turn they don't. And likewise, you could say that's the case for the first Whippoorwill. I've been in and I've seen a lot of people just ignore the first Whippoorwill, and then suddenly a second one shows up. And when there's the third and there's a flock of Whippoorwills just like tweeting about your little death, like that is super like flavorfully cool. And it makes it that much sweeter when you blow them up with dynamite. Like there's some fun payoffs. Like with everything else with Dunwich, all these things, kind of the thesis that we've kind of like we've uncovered in this video is that all these enemies have big lows but big highs as well.
Yeah, this guy's really good design. There's more and more ways to deal with him these days. I think originally the best way was like be cop level 2, right? You just have the cop shoot him out of the trees, and then you're done. No action, no test. Otherwise, you have to do the engage, and you know it's actually kind of a quasi 3-fight enemy, maybe more. And it's not easy. I think most classes didn't have a good way of doing it outside of Guardian. So now there's so many ways. So you can kind of tech for these guys. You don't have to, right? But I love the dynamite idea with all of them there. But this concept of an enemy that is actually acting like a treachery in some respects is one that I love. It's like, how can we expand this idea of the type of card, right? Is it, you know, an enemy that you just have to fight? Is it something because it's aloof you can just ignore? You're walking away from it like other treacheries that attach to locations, but then it moves. So that's kind of cool, right? You can imagine if you were to redesign other cards in this game as if it were an enemy, how that would slightly change things, because now it still has all of these, you know, enemy-like things. Like, well, let's say you had an obscuring fog that was an enemy instead, right? You get +2 shroud to the location that you're at. It moves around. It's aloof, a hunter kind of thing. Like it's still obscuring fog, but maybe it is solvable in some other way, right? You can engage it and kill it. You can use it for like Trish's ability. There's just so much more that can come about by stepping outside the box that some of those cards invite you to think of them as. So like this is an enemy because it's a creature, clearly, but it's starting us on a path that I think they do this, but I wish they did it a little more.
Yeah.
Where they could be more creative with the effects of the cards that are in play.
Definitely. I agree. All right. Last card from you, Daniel. I even forget what it is myself. Oh, no, I remember what it is.
Yeah, I picked a location.
Yeah, that's spicy. I saw that and I was like, okay, I got to put this on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully at this point you've played the Dunwich Legacy. I don't know why you're watching this video if you haven't played it. But spoiler alert, the finale is an incredible finale. I think it still ranks up there for me with any of them. It might even just still be my favorite. Part of the reason is that locations are in the encounter deck, which I think was already mind-blowing at the time. This one actually isn't, but the other side of this one has the same text. You must have at least 2 clues in order to move to the edge of the universe. This is your goal through a good chunk of the scenario, that you need to get to the edge of the universe. In order to move to it, you need 2 clues of your own. That is a big ask for some investigators whose only job was to fight things. And they're like, what do you mean I need 2 clues? I know you often talk about this is a campaign where you're meant to flex a bit. You could just not go here. That is an option you have.
Yeah. You could just do the valiant sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. I think in the case of this particular location, I think there's another version of this, which is, I forget what it's called, the one that's the last location to go to. That one you do also need 2 clues in order to go to it, or you need 2 clues to resign, right? 2 clues to resign. Okay, so you could just bypass this one and let your cleavers deal with it. But even so, this is a scenario that wants you to move around a lot. It wants you to get going with the objective, and then having some clues of your own is not a big ask. There's some 1 and 2 shroud locations, including this one, by the way, for later problems. So you can get clues, but it's also that second sentence here. Investigators at the edge of the universe cannot draw cards during the upkeep phase. If you have not forgotten about that line of text there, you will slowly, if you're trying to get the clues here, you're going to slowly run out of cards. This line of text was also, or at least part of it, in the 1B, I guess, scenario that is called The House Always Wins, where there's the VIP lounge.
Yep.
And you can't gain resources or draw cards during upkeep. And you notice it. You're like, uh-oh, how am I getting the rest of the juice that makes this whole deck work?
Yeah.
And you feel it here too. You're constantly losing stuff, and you need to draw cards somehow. So I think that's just like another. I like campaigns that have some kind of a theme that gets revisited, especially into the finale, since the finales often in this game are like something otherworldly, like this one, some extra dimensional locations, and it seems like, oh yeah, all that stuff you did before doesn't matter because those cards are all gone. But I like when they bring back some old mechanics, or at least a little flavor or hint of one. And that just reminds me of the only other. There's maybe another one. I don't remember how often they go back to this well, but having a location where you are stopped from drawing cards especially hurts.
Yep. I think that Dunwich as a whole is a good example of a scenario of the campaign. It's the best example I think of where like all your decisions matter, like everything kind of comes back in the finale, which I think is super exciting.
The agenda flips make you look at your campaign log for things that you've done. Yeah,
which is really nice. I think also this card is a good example of the thing I've been talking about, where if you come into this with little juice or some juice, this is pure downside on the text on here. But if you have a lot of juice, but there are some things that might make you not want to get through your deck for some reason that we might be talking about in a few seconds, suddenly this text is actually protection, right? Which is super interesting and super engaging to see such a simple line of text have that sort of strategic impact on the game, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I did think of that. I hadn't mentioned it yet. You're right. There is. Let's move on to the last card then.
This one is obviously, I think, the #1 card from Dunwich Legacy. It was on both of our lists. I think it's also in the thumbnail for this video, but it's Beyond the Veil. This is the most impactful card that I've never seen triggered. Which goes to show the power of the line of text on this card, which is just that if your deck has no cards in it, take 10 damage and discard Beyond the Veil. That is such a crazy line of text, right? And it's so scary even now. Like I know I drew it probably in the Iron Man challenge. And I was like, oh God, no, I'm terrified of it no matter what, right?
Yeah.
But it's never triggered. But I think that just shows the power of this card because it is so scary and like the threat of it is so looming. And you realize that everything else that you've seen so far is designed to make this happen is like so Dunwich Legacy. Light of a Forgamon makes this damage direct. You can't soak it anymore. It now becomes a direct headshot, right? Arcane Barrier, Visions of Future Past. These are all here to like make you get through your deck quicker, right? Whippoorwill makes those tests harder, so you're going to be failing them more, right? Like, well, not all these things are going to be in the same scenario together, mind you, except I actually think they're all in extracurricular activity, all these cards I've mentioned so far. But like there's all these things that are like the perfect like gumbo being made, and it's just like, you know, it's just like you get there and you're like, wait a minute, Yagsath made me this and it tastes awful, I don't want to eat it. And he's like, you're still going to eat it. But still, I've never seen it trigger, but I'm still scared of it triggering.
I have seen it trigger.
You have? Yeah
Wasn't fatal because there was a lot of soak in play, so comboing with other stuff. I've also, I think, maybe I haven't seen it trigger per se, but maybe we just like gave up with Yagsath's ability, right? Like instead of using the reaction to discard cards, instead of taking a million horror, you're like, well, that would kill me that way, so I'll just take the horror and be done with it.
Yeah.
So it is a threat in the final scenario. It's a threat in kind of, I mean, it's not as much of a threat in the shorter scenarios, right? Which I think makes it kind of this cool looming idea that in the future it might be even worse, and it is. So going back to the last location I brought up, where I like how there's themes throughout a campaign, and then they come back in an interesting way in the finale. With Yagsath in particular, this really does become interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad that they printed some tech cards for this later on. Immediately they did with Devil's Luck, right?
Yeah.
And then Deny Existence, of course, just works. But I love this threat. I love this, like, you will die. And the 10 damage does matter. Compare it to kind of its little sibling that we saw in Hemlock Vale, which is Captivating Gleam, where 5 horror isn't quite as bad. It can kill people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a good trade-off because it's easier to get to 0 cards in hand than empty your deck. But I do like that it is... we did see, like, the little brother to Beyond the Veil. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like this. Plus it has Surge, right? Because it does nothing on its own.
Yep.
But I love how you can draw this, and then later you draw another copy, and it's a free encounter card, besides the Surge.
Yeah. I do also, you feel like a hero when you draw your second copy and you're like, I saved you guys. I knew you were going to die from it, and you have to thank me. On to the tech. I'm going to be bringing tech for it in mind, but I like I think there's like fun kind of tech to deal with this card, and then there's the boring kind of tech, right? Where like Deny Existence is kind of just like, oh, well, that's, you know, that card's just like always good. I think it's more fun if you have the tech that's kind of just a little bit more like, oh, this is here to do Beyond the Veil. It's like God Sort Them Out for the Conglomeration of Spheres, where it's like, oh, you get this time, this card that's like normally not great gets a chance to shine here, and I think that Beyond the Veil does a nice job of having those cards work if you do want to do that.
Yeah, like Quantum Flux or something. It'd be interesting to have a card like that was like a story asset that they gave you to be like, you don't know why this is good, or like it's kind of always good, but it would be a neat way to reverse the card discard mechanic that the campaign has.
Definitely. All right. Well, that's it. Those are 5 cards. We had 10 cards. We did about 5 minutes a card, so that's pretty all right. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Daniel had a great time talking about Dunwich Legacy with you, and I had an even greater time doing our Iron Man together, which, if you do not know, we recorded on Tuesday of Dunwich Legacy Week, and it's going to be coming out on the channel in the future as one big, long video, so you get to enjoy the whole thing with us when we run it.
And it's really good that we didn't give you any spoilers during this video.
Yeah, it is very good on that. It's very good. That would have been very rude of us. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of Dunwich Legacy Week. We have some cool videos coming up your way. There might even be a return of Daniel later on in the week. No promises. We actually don't know. We haven't recorded that video yet, but, you know, there's always a chance. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. And as always, JJ's.